Hello and welcome to the bottom 12 movies I saw for 2014. Again, I'm not calling this the bottom 12 movies I saw in theaters like I did last year, and there's a reason for that. If you don't know, then go check out the top 12 movies I saw this year, where I explain it in the first 2 minutes of the video. More or less, it's just that I started watching movies again in theaters late this year, so some of the movies that came out in early 2014 I didn't actually see until they were out on DVD or Netflix. So as long as it came out in 2014 and I've seen it, I'm still counting it towards the list. And that's why this is the bottom 12 movies, in my opinion, of 2014. So before we start with the official countdown, I do have one honorable mention that almost made the list, but didn't quite hit the mark. And that goes to Deliver Us from Evil. Why is this an honorable mention? Because honestly, I really didn't remember anything about this movie. As I'm looking through the list of films that I saw this year, there were a few that I was like, wait, what was that one about? And I'd have to think about it or look up the plot summary or whatever. And this one I just could not remember. Even when I read the plot summary, I was like, I just don't remember this. I ended up having to go on Google and looking at images of it, and then it slowly started to come back to me, and then after a little bit I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I remember what happened. But even though with all that, was it a bad film to where it should rank on the list, or was it just a forgettable film? And as I compared it to other movies on this list where I had the same problem of not being able to remember it, some of those actually came back to me relatively easily, and despite them just being forgettable films, some of them had things that I consider flaws that I just couldn't overlook, where Deliver Us from Evil didn't really have anything wrong with it as much as it was just a forgettable film. So that's why I'm giving it an honorable mention. It almost made the list, but you got lucky and you're not on the list. Okay, so number 12 on my bottom 12 movies I saw. So remember, that means this is the one out of all these that I liked the most, because it's the bottom 12, so 12 would be the one I liked the most, 1 being the one that I hated the most or liked the least or disliked the most. I don't really want to say I hated it because, well, you'll see. But the number 12, so the one way up here out of all the ones that I disliked, sadly goes to a comic book movie. I know you're like, oh, what? A comic book movie? How can it be? Well, number 12 on my list this year for bottom movies goes to Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. Now, you may be saying, what are you talking about? That movie was great. No, it wasn't. I love the first Sin City film. It was one of my favorite films of that year, of that decade. If I had to do my overall top 10 films of my entire life, it would probably be ranked up there somewhere in that top 10 list. So, of course, when I knew they were going to be doing a sequel to it, I couldn't wait. We got everything in between. We got The Watchmen, we got The Spirit, we got all these other comic book-based movies that led into this big Avengers verse that we're doing now. And it all kind of started, in my opinion, with how beautiful Sin City was done. So we waited and waited and waited, and it's been, decade or two now since we waited for a sequel to Sin City. I kept hearing there were different reasons they held out on it, one of them being that they were waiting for Angelina Jolie to agree to play a part. Obviously she wasn't in the film, so either her schedule just continued to conflict or she just said no. But they waited so long for this. 2 of the characters in it actually died. Michael Clarke Duncan died and had to be recast. And I will give them credit, the guy they got to fill the role, he fits the role. I almost, as I was watching, I was like, wait, did they film some of this before he passed? Because, but then as I watched, I was like, no, that's definitely not him. But the guy they got is close enough that I can let that one slide. And then also, Brittany Murphy died. Now, the blonde waitress in this is called by a different name, so I don't even know if she's supposed to be the same character. Probably not. But is it supposed to be the same character, or did they rewrite it as, oh no, it's this whole new girl just because Brittany Murphy died and we had to cast someone else who has a similar look? But despite that, I can overlook that. People die. It happens. The thing that really bothers me about this movie is how horrible it looked. You know, Bruce Willis's makeup looked horrible. Mickey Rourke as Marv, his makeup looked horrible. Just compared to how amazing they looked in the first one, it looks like they just cut the budget in half on makeup and effects, and they just like, oh yeah, all we gotta do is throw the stupid black and white filter over it, and people love it. You know, as much as I did like that whole comic book aspect of the way the first movie looked, that doesn't save the film. You know, you can't just throw that on it. I mean, look at The Spirit. It had the exact same motif, and people hated that movie. I was indifferent to it. I didn't really know The Spirit that well to like or dislike it, but people hated that movie, and it had the same thing. So why would you think that that would work on a piss poorly done sequel? Now, the story, I haven't read the main Sin City book. I haven't read any of the follow-ups to it, so I don't know how this compared to the book. But if the book is anything like this, that book doesn't need to exist, because this movie didn't need to exist. The overall premise, it didn't add to anything from the first one. It didn't lead up to any characters or anything. It was just overall boring. Another character they recast was the character of Miho, who was one of my favorites from the first movie, and then I see this other girl playing her, and it's just like, really? This is supposed to be, you know, the first character of Miho, she moved, like, you know, fluidly and everything, and was just this assassin. In this one, she's just like this clumsy little Asian girl, and, you know, she's still supposed to be like this deadly accurate thing, but you can tell she just doesn't have the fluid motion of the original actress. I think that was a really poor recasting decision. But, you know, like I was saying, overall, this whole movie was just boring. It didn't add anything to the mythos of Sin City for me, and it just really brought nothing to the table. And, you know, for something that was over a decade in the waiting, to be like, oh, let's just throw out something to keep people interested in Sin City, well, let's just put it this way. If another sequel comes out, I'm indifferent to it. You know, that's how much you've killed the anticipation of this for me. I was anticipating this, finally got it, and now it's just, well, if this is where they're going, whatever. So yeah, that's mainly why Sin City: A Dame to Kill For is ranked number 12 on my bottom 12 movies of 2014. So number 11 spot on my list of bottom movies I saw in 2014 goes to RoboCop. Now you may be saying, wait a minute, you didn't do a review of RoboCop. You're right, I didn't, because RoboCop came out early in the year, and I didn't start seeing movies until mid-June of 2014. And so I ended up buying RoboCop when it came out on DVD. It's actually right here somewhere. Or maybe it's over on that one. I don't know. Anyway, it's somewhere on my DVD rack over here. But this movie, you know, if you're going to remake something, at least try and keep it somewhat close to the source material. The first RoboCop film that came out back when I was a kid, it was amazing because as a kid, seeing something so graphically violent and gory and everything was just amazing. It was something you didn't see. And now, in this version, we get the watered-down PG version. You know, it might have been a PG-13. You know, part of what made RoboCop was that R rating. You know, they had to fight to get to an R rating from an X rating. That's how awesome the first one was. And then you take everything that made the first one that good and that absorbing to where it just drew all of us kids of the 80s in, and 90s kids too, where it just drew us all into it in that aspect, and you strip all that away and you give us RoboCop. You know, what can I say? You know, they tried to strip away all that stuff in the sequels to RoboCop, because there was actually 3 RoboCop films. The second one, everyone loved because, hey, RoboCop's back, let's see what he does. Oh, okay, well, it was a sequel at least. Then 3 came out, and I was like, yeah, he's back again, let's see what happens. And, you know, don't get me wrong, 3, it has a place in my heart. Despite its problems, it still sits right here. So much to the fact I have all 3 of the originals right over here as well. But they started doing that with the original 3, and that's why it stopped at 3. It ended up getting so watered down it got its own TV series, which obviously you can't blow people up on TV. Parents are watching. It did get a rebooted mini-series in Canada, which was, I believe, called the Dark Justice series. And that series, they tried to do all the same stuff that you just did in this remake. The streamlined, all-black RoboCop, so it appeals to the kids. It existed in the Dark Justice series. So it's not anything new that you're doing. You're just taking old concepts and stripping down. The Dark Justice series, with its faults, it was still a watchable thing. It's like, yeah, this is a little boring, but you know what? It's RoboCop, and it's my RoboCop. And then this, you watch, and it's just, what is this? You might as well not even called it RoboCop. You might as well called it anything other than RoboCop. Yeah, when it first starts out, he has the traditional RoboCop look, but that's not enough to sell it. Another downfall I had to this movie was the person they cast as RoboCop. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about the actor. I guess he's a decent actor, but the problem I had is the first thing I ever saw this guy in was The Killing, where he plays a junkie cop. So he's basically, in this film, they're saying, you look enough like a junkie crackhead to play our role. Or, make yourself look like a junkie crackhead to play our role. So even when he, bulks up a little bit for the RoboCop role and, is playing the more straight-laced, clean-cut type of guy, I'm still just seeing that crackhead from The Killing. And it just doesn't fit with RoboCop. In the original RoboCop, we didn't see a whole lot of Alex Murphy prior to him becoming RoboCop. So the fact that they spend so much time on this character and actually let me see the fact that it is this person, I think is another thing that really kills this film for me. When people talk about all these films raping their childhood, I don't really like that whole phrase, even though I use it occasionally. This is just another one of those examples of everything that made something in the 80s or 90s great is trying to be remade, but they don't understand what about it made it great, even though a lot of these directors are from my generation. These people are only like in their 30s or 40s. They should understand this because they grew up watching it and understand the love that we had for it, but then they don't know enough of the source material or just don't care. They're just out to make $1, and they give us garbage. And I'm just so tired of this. Anyway, that's enough of a rant on this one. That's why RoboCop is number 11 on my list of bottom movies I saw this year. So let's get on to number 10, because it only gets worse from here, right? So the number 10 spot on this list goes to Transformers 4: Age of Extinction, I believe was the subtitle. And hopefully that's exactly where this is going. These movies just need to go extinct. You want to talk about the destruction of someone's childhood? This has been going on for 4 films now. When is enough enough? I don't understand how these films keep grossing money. Everyone hates them, but everyone still goes to see them just to see how much worse it's going to get. And sadly, when you keep going to see it, the theater still keeps making money, and the studios decide, hey, everyone went to see it, let's throw out another one. Make them stop. If any film series needs a reboot, they took the Tobey Maguire version of Spider-Man and said, hey, we're done with it, we're going to do this new one over here. If anything needs that, a back-to-back reboot, stop Transformers now, reboot Transformers, put a different director, different writer, different cast. Keep the voice actors if you want. Optimus Prime is really the only one that really returns, I think, anyway. Everyone else is just a rotating cast of characters. So, keep Optimus, redo it, redo the CGI, because the CGI, like everyone says, honestly, half the time you can't tell who's fighting who or who's on what side because everything looks the same. So redo it, make it look more like Transformers. Just stop with this franchise. If you want to keep doing them, it's time to reboot. Let's reboot Transformers. We'll start over. Let's make it awesome. Get Michael Bay the frag out of here, even though, he did one good thing this year, unfortunately. Go watch the other top 12 list if you want to know what that was. But yeah, Michael Bay just needs to stop with the Transformers thing. The one good thing about this movie and why it's only ranked number 10 on my list this year instead of being much higher, they finally got rid of Shia LaBeouf. Honestly, that was the one highlight. The one reason I went and saw this, I had no idea what happened in 2 or 3. I watched the first one. I think I watched half of the second one. I might have watched the third one. Yeah, because that's the one where they replaced Megan Fox, right? Yeah, so I think I did see the third one, but honestly, I don't even remember it. But now we're at the fourth one, and I went to see it not knowing anything about the story, and it didn't matter because nothing happened. I just didn't care. There was nothing in the story other than, hey, Shia LaBeouf's gone. Oh, we got Marky Mark and his daughter, who is the new Shia LaBeouf, who's trying to get laid by this guy who's like twice her age. Speaking of child rape. And it's like, what is with the writers or Michael Bay or whoever that keeps putting, let's have these teenagers trying to get laid in the movie. In this one, it's a girl trying to get laid by an older guy, which, it happens. I understand that. I was a teenager once. But when you say it in a movie, first reaction is everyone's going to be like, oh, that's wrong. She shouldn't be like that. That guy should know better than that. So what do? Oh, let's write statutory rape laws into the movie. Romeo and Juliet laws. Yes, they exist. Look them up if you're really that interested. We don't need them in a movie. Like I said, just stop with the Transformers at 4. Reboot it. Let's start back over from the beginning. Hell, show them on Cybertron. Show them when they crash land on Earth. Show them meeting, what the hell are the guys' names? The whole Witwicky clan was originally in the animated series, but it was a mechanic and his son, which I think his name was Spike. Is that right? I don't know. It's been so long since I've seen it. Generation 1 was on Netflix, but they pulled it off the other day. So, yeah, it's time to stop with Transformers. I've had enough of it. They're making a 5th one. Okay, another downfall of this one, just to expand this out even more, the fucking Dinobots. The whole draw of Transformers 4 Age of Extinction was, it's finally going to have the Dinobots. We're going to get to see Grimlock. We're going to get to see them all merge together in the giant fucking Destructicon, whatever the hell its name was that I can't remember. They were in it for like 2 seconds of the movie, and they didn't do shit. Spoiler in case you don't want to know, Optimus Prime punches Grimlock in the face to get him to listen to him, and then he rides him into town so he can get to town quicker than just running or turning into a truck and driving. Because Grimlock is twice his size and can travel land quicker for some reason. That was it. That was the extent of the Dinobots. Yeah, that was really worth seeing the fucking Dinobots in this movie, wasn't it? Anyway, enough of this. I said all I want to say about Transformers. And that's why Transformers Bark at the Moon 7 was ranked number 10 on my list of bottom movies I saw in 2014. Okay, so the number 9 position on my list this year for bottom 12 movies I saw goes to The November Man. Now you may be saying, wait a minute. Okay, the first 3 I understand. The November Man was a decent film. Why is it ranked here? Honestly, because I forgot what happened. This movie was totally forgettable to me. They're just, it started out with a strong premise and just kind of towards the end, just. And honestly, I had to sit here and think about what it was about. And honestly, as I was thinking of it, I wasn't even thinking about this movie. I was trying to remember what another movie was about. And the movies were so similar, I was actually thinking of the premise of The November Man while trying to remember the other one. And then as I was like, okay, yeah, I remember what happened in that movie. And then I was like, wait, no, that wasn't even this movie. That was a completely different movie. So, yeah, overall, it starts out strong, but overall was forgettable. The ending was just, it seemed like they wrote the script up to a certain point, and they're like, okay, so how are we going to end it? I don't know, but we need another 30 minutes of runtime. Oh, shoot. Well, what can we do? Well, he's face-to-face with the guy who's behind it all. Okay, so what else can we do? Let's have him have a random daughter that we didn't talk about up until now. Okay. And then what happens? Well, the guy who's behind it all kidnaps his daughter. Okay, why? So he won't kill him. Okay, so then what? Well, now he's got to find a way to save his daughter but still beat the bad guy. Okay, can we pad that out for 30 minutes? Yeah, I think so. As the ending just... He took a potentially good movie and just crapped all over the ending. And honestly, like I said, by the time I left the theater, I'd already forgotten most of what had happened in the film, so much so that I thought it was another film I'd seen. And yes, I'm not raging about this one as much as I raged about the last three, but that's because I don't remember enough about this film to actually rage about it. And that's why The November Man is sitting at number 9 on my list of top movies, bottom movies that I saw for 2014. Alright, so we're at number 8 now on the bottom 12 movies I saw for this year. And just like every year I do this, which has only been one other year, both lists, yeah, I'm going to spoil it for the other list if you haven't seen it already. Both lists this year have a tie. This year's bottom 12 list tie is here at number 8, and I really had to debate on where this tie was going to fall between this and some of the others. And number 8, it ended up falling at number 8, and the two that tied for number 8 this year are Into the Storm and Earth to Echo. Now, why did these tie? Because essentially they're the same film, and neither of them really served a purpose. So they're both basically kids running around with cameras, half found footage style, half filmed. Kids, trying to just be out and have a fun day, kind of the Stand By Me type of thing. And then something happens to where they're in some type of peril, and then it resolves, and it's just pointless. And yeah, it's neither one of these films had really anything to offer. Into the Storm, okay, people storm chasing. We made a whole movie about it called Twister back in the 90s, which was a blockbuster hit. Kind of shunned now because it didn't age well, but overall the whole idea of storm chasing, it kind of comes back into play. This is basically a remake of Twister, but it throws in this second story with these kids, who are, one I think is trying to get laid, maybe, or trying to get a girlfriend, something, but they're out filming stuff with these cameras. Then you got these other two characters that are trying to be Johnny Knoxville's jackass, and they're out like, oh, we're going to be storm chasers too, but we're going to do it stupidly because we're redneck hicks. And a lot of the stuff in this film could have been avoided had people just been smarter. I mean, the first part of the movie, it opens with 4 kids in a car making out, and one of them sees something in the distance and gets out to start filming it with his camera, up until the point it's right on top of him. He's like, oh, it's a tornado. And then everyone's like, get in the car, let's go, let's go. And he's like, no, hold on, I got to film this. Essentially, you just got yourself and your 3 friends killed, you dumb. Anyway, that's basically everything that goes on through this entire movie. And by the end of the movie, you're like, okay, what was the point of this movie? Did it, give a social message about, humanity? Did it give anything? At least Twister made everyone interested in storm chasing for a couple years. Yeah, it just didn't offer. Like at the end, I was like, what was the point of this other than it was a tornado movie? There wasn't one. And Earth to Echo was the same thing. You start out with these kids who are all getting ready to move because their housing development got sold, and then they're like, oh, let's go out and have one last adventure before we all leave. Again, kind of in a Stand By Me fashion. And then, oh, look, we found an alien, like E.T., And, well, let's go on this adventure with him. So they go around doing all this found footage stuff. Oh, we're in peril. The guy's here. He wants the alien. Okay, well, where's the alien leading us? Oh, he led us back to our house. Well, why did he lead us back to our house? Oh, that's where his spaceship is. Wait a minute, these guys aren't land developers at all. They're just buying out our land because they want to dig up his spaceship. They're Area 51, yeah. And by the end, it's like, what was the point? Nothing resolved from it. Yeah, the alien got away. Spoiler if you haven't seen it. But then he starts sending them messages again like, hey, I'm coming back. It's like, why? You left. Why are you coming back? Again, by the end of this movie, it offered nothing. Was it if you want to look at it as it was a fun little romp of kids running around in the woods and having an adventure, sure, fine, whatever. Maybe it's that it was targeted towards kids and that's why I didn't understand it. But hell, I mean, it falls along the lines of, what was that other movie that came out? Super 8, I think it was, where everyone was like, oh, it's such an awesome movie. And I watched it and it's like, okay, it's these kids trying to make a film because one has an interest in being a filmmaker, and then they find something alien on a train that wrecks that he happened to be filming as it wrecked. And then, like, that's all I honestly remember about the movie. Was there a monster? I don't know. So Earth to Echo kind of reminded me of that. Like, I liked Super 8 and I liked Earth to Echo, but they were pointless. Why do they exist? So honestly, as much as I probably liked Earth to Echo slightly better than Into the Storm, the fact that they were both pretty much pointless movies that I sat through just to sit through, I can't rank one above the other. I mean, if I absolutely had to, I'd probably rank Earth to Echo above Into the Storm, but that's by a very, very microscopic margin, not enough to really bump one above the other, and that's why Earth to Echo and Into the Storm share the number 8 spot on my bottom 12 lists of movies I saw in 2014. Okay, so we're at the number 7 position now, and the number 7 spot on my list this year goes to Annabelle. Now, some of you may be saying, wait, I liked Annabelle. Really? You really liked Annabelle? Annabelle to me was, let's take a passably good movie like The Conjuring, take probably one of the more interesting aspects of it that wasn't really touched upon, and let's make a movie about that. Okay, great premise, right? Now let's shit all over that premise. Let's make it such a convoluted mess of pointlessness that I'm at a loss for words to describe it. Annabelle is a film that didn't need to be made. They, like I said, they took the little touched upon interesting concept from The Conjuring and made a whole movie about it. Had they done it in the opposite order, had they released Annabelle and then Annabelle led into The Conjuring as being its sequel, I might have had a little bit more appreciation for Annabelle, or had The Conjuring been about Annabelle to begin with, it would have been more interesting, but this movie just did nothing to add to The Conjuring. It didn't add anything to the story. It didn't form any resolution on anything. It wasn't like, oh, that's why this happened in The Conjuring. Oh, that's why that. It's like they shoehorned a lot of that stuff in just to tie the two stories together. And it's just a film that didn't need to exist. And honestly, it really wasn't all that intriguing of a film. If you liked it, then you probably like every jump scare movie that comes out, because that's all it really had to offer. The way it played out was going to be predictable. Just everything that was going on. Like I said, half the time, they're talking about how this baby in this movie is so important, and half the time the baby wasn't even around. This mother just had a baby, and she's like, oh, I'm going to go to the grocery store. It's like, where's your kid? You don't have a babysitter. Where's your kid? It's like, oh, the baby's sleeping. I'll run downstairs to the laundry room and do laundry. Who does that? Put the baby in a bassinet and take it with you. Unless you're going, like, into the next room to do laundry. If you got to go to a different floor in your building, no parent leaves their kids alone. At least not an infant. Maybe if they're 5 or something, like, hey, I'm going to run downstairs real quick. It's... now I'm just nitpicking the little things I already talked about in the review. But, yeah, overall, it just didn't need to exist. I actually read an article online that said, is the true story of the real Annabelle more interesting than the movie? And I read the little article it had about the true story of the real Annabelle, and honestly, yeah, it was. Again, it's not that interesting of a story, but it was more interesting than what this film portrayed. They took a lot of liberties with what the story was originally about, and just, yeah, as you can tell, I'm at a loss for words about what to say about this movie, about, it's just pointless. Everything at this point in the list is probably just going to be a pointless movie, not a lot of me raging, so all the rage is probably out of the way. I'm just at a loss for words about what to say about this movie, which is why it ranked number 7 on my list of bottom 12 movies I saw this year.